What's going on, guys? It's Red Bull Tanker, and welcome back to Axis and Allies 1940, turn 5 for the Allies. The Allies, just like the Axis, were very much on the move this turn, so let's begin. So we'll start down here in the Mediterranean theater, where a coalition of Allied forces attacked the Axis forces here in northern Italy. The Italians had 4 infantry defending, a tank, a strat, and then the Germans had 2 fighters and a tactical. So the Allies went in. Let's see here. They had 2 French infantry, 1 British infantry, 3 U.S., actually more than that. They had 7 U.S. infantry, 3 mech, and an artillery, and then all these fighters from around the area came in, and then a British tank also joined the fight. The British cruiser here in C-Zone 95 did not get a hit on its offshore bombardment, and then in the ensuing 1 round of combat, the Allies killed the Italian strat, 4 infantry tank, as well as the German tactical and 2 fighters. The Allies ended up losing 6 infantry altogether, 1 Brit, 2 French, and then the 3 U.S. infantry regiments from the 1st Infantry Division. So the Big Red 1 has been mauled and is effectively out of the war for a short time. But so northern Italy has fallen, and the entire Italian boot is now, at least for the moment, in Allied hands. Alright, so then we'll go up to the North Atlantic, where the Brit battleship and the French cruiser went after the German battleship here in C-Zone 125. The battle went like 3 rounds. Everybody was missing. And then finally on the 3rd round, the Allies got the hits they needed, and the Germans did not get a hit. Very poor dice roll for everyone in those first 2 rounds. Very, 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 very poor. Alright, now we'll go over to the Eastern Front, where the Russians launched a couple bold offensives. First, the Russians took their mechanized force from their army here in Bryansk of 5 mech and 6 tanks. They blitzed through Belarus and attacked Leningrad, where the Germans had 3 tanks, a tactical, and 2 fighters. The Russians struck. The battle lasted 2 rounds, and at the end of it, the Germans lost their 3 tanks, tactical, and 2 fighters. The Russians lost their 4 mech. And then the Russians gathered up the rest of their strength and struck the 6 German armored divisions here in Smolensk. That battle went 2 rounds as well. And at the end of it, the Germans lost the 6 tanks. However, poor defense rolls on their part only killed 2 Soviet infantry. So the Russians lucked out on that. Alright, going over to the China theater. So 5 British infantry and an artillery supported by a fighter went into Xikang to attack 3 Japanese infantry and an artillery. The battle went 1 round. The Japanese had 2 infantry and an artillery. 1 round of combat. The Japanese were destroyed at no loss to the Brits. Next, the Chinese took 1 infantry. Their 1 infantry that they had in Guangxi. The Brits took a tank that they had in Yan'an along with a fighter, and they attacked the lone Japanese tank that was holding Hong Kong. The battle went 2 rounds. The Japanese tank was destroyed at a cost of the Chinese infantry, though the Brit survived, and Hong Kong is once again in British hands. Next, these 4 Chinese infantry, supported by a British infantry and a British fighter, went in and attacked the single Japanese tank that was in Henan. They killed the Japanese tank, and the Japanese tank retaliated by killing the British infantry. Then the Brits did a walk-on here into Senshi. And that is it for the China theater. Coming over to the Pacific theater, the Americans decided that they were not going to launch their attack on Pearl Harbor. Instead, they decided to do sort of an economy strike against the Japanese this turn. The Japanese had 3 undefended transports here in the Pacific. They had 2 here off of Wake and 1 here off of C-Zone 125 off of Midway. So the U.S. took their bomber from the western United States, which could go 7, and it went 1, 2, 3, 4. Killed that transport, and then 5, 6, 7 to land in the Aleutians. While the Aussies took 1 fighter off of the Solomons and went 1, 2, 3. Sunk the two transports, and then 4, 5 landing in the Johnston Islands. Though it was sort of a sacrificial, but I think the outcome of making Japan pay for more transports is going to be vital. And then finally, I know this happens on the non-combat, but then the Aussies walked into Celebes, making sure that all of Indonesia is now firmly under Allied control. All right, purchases. We'll go to the Russians first. The Russians had 40 IPC to spend. They had 30. I thought they had more than that. Let me double check my notes here. Wait, turn 4. Oh, crap. For some reason, I did not give the Russians... So, okay, at the end of turn 4, in my notes, Russia was supposed to have 40 IPC. And I said that they had 30. And they bought 3 infantry in Stalingrad. They bought 5 infantry and a tank for Moscow. So that would have been... So 5, 8, so 24. So that would have been all of it. So they collected... Alright, so I'll have to add 10 IPC on to what Russia collected because I miscalculated. So they'll get an extra 10 at the end of their turn. So like I said, alright, so they bought 3 infantry in Stalingrad and then 5 infantry and a tank for Moscow. At the end of the turn, the Russians collected 30 plus the 10 that they accidentally saved at the end of their turn. So the Russians will have 40 IPC for next turn. I am an idiot. Could have used that extra 10 this turn for the Russians, but that's okay. Alright, going over to the United States. The United States had 85 IPC to spend. On the European theater, they bought 3 tanks in Rome and flagged them under the 5th Armored Division. So the 5th Armored Division has landed in Rome. And then out in the Pacific, the Americans bought 2 more destroyers, 2 cruisers, and 2 tacticals, and saved 5 IPC. So then at the end of the turn, the U.S. collected 58 IPC, plus the 5 that they saved, plus the 15 in bonuses, so the U.S. gets 78 IPC for next turn. China had 15 to spend. They spent it all. They bought 5 infantry, placed them here in Guangxi, and then at the end of the turn, China collected 7 plus 6 for bonus, so they got 13. Excuse me. All right, the British Empire. All right, the British Empire had 40 IPC to spend. In Britain, they bought in Britain, they bought a destroyer and 2 transports, while in Persia, right? Yes. Then in Persia, which I didn't put down, so I'm going to put those down. I don't know why I didn't do that. Give me 2 seconds. Whoops. I also realized I didn't really go over any of the non-combat, so I'll do that after I go through purchases. My apologies, everybody. I am getting way too ahead of myself this turn for the Allies. So 2 mech and 2 tanks in Persia for the Brits. They saved 2 IPC. At the end of the turn, the Brits collected 33 plus 2 plus 5 for bonuses, so the Brits still get 40 for the next turn. All right, Far East Command. Far East Command had 22 to spend. Doing something a little impractical. They bought a tank and a carrier, which was actually all 22 IPC. So then at the end of the turn, the FEC collected 17 plus the 5 for retaking Hong Kong. So they have all their initial territories again. So 17 plus the 5 is 22. Anzacs had 29 to spend. Down here in Queensland, they bought a tank and 2 transports. And then down here in Sydney, they bought a destroyer, saving 1 IPC. Then at the end of the turn, the Anzacs collected 21 plus 1 plus 10 for bonuses, so the Anzacs will have 32 for next turn. Alright, so like I said, I didn't really go over the non-combats this turn, so for the Allies, so let me do that promptly now. I do apologize again. Alright, so non-combats, the Brits and the Americans brought their forces from the eastern United States and Canada, brought them down to Morocco. So the U.S. has brought down the 29th Infantry Division and the 3rd Armored Division. Let's see here. Like I said, after the North Italy battle, the Allies consolidated all their air power here in southern Italy. The Russians, for non-combat, they moved their infantry from Iraq into Transjordan. If most of you are aware of the objectives, you can kind of see at least what the Russians are trying to attempt to do with that. And then after combat, they brought their fighters here. I miscalculated. I sent 2 fighters from here up to the battle here, not realizing they couldn't get back to Moscow, so they are now sitting out here with 1 infantry sort of on the Lem, which is probably not good for them. In the Middle East, the Brits took their forces from Iraq and Persia and pushed them into northwest Persia. The Brits are preparing to send. Well, I mean, he knows he kind of knows what it looks like, especially when I do that. But as many of you can guess, what the British are probably going to try and do in the coming turns with that force. For the FEC, again, their non-combats was just getting their fighters back, bringing their units from their 1 tank from India up to Yan'an. Anzacs, same thing. They brought a fighter back to Yan'an. They took Celebes, and then moved their 1 fighter here to the Johnston Islands after killing those 2 transports. And then the U.S. didn't really do anything in the Pacific other than they had to bring that bomber up to the Aleutian Islands. Okay, well, so that is going to be it for turn 5. Going over to the top of the map, as you can see now, the Germans control only 3 victory cities now, and Japan controls... Ooh, no, they do not. They have 1, 2... Japan also has 3 victory cities, because they have Tokyo, Shanghai, and Honolulu. Oh, and Manila, so never mind. Yep, Japan does have 4 victory cities, and Germany only has 3 with Berlin, Warsaw, and Paris. Or the Axis in Europe only have Berlin, Warsaw, and Paris. All right, well, that is going to be it for turn 5, and we will see you guys next time for Axis turn 6. So until then, guys, as always, take care. Oh, those are in the way, so you can't even see. So once again, I'll kind of go over here. All right, take care, guys.